while I was in it, I was like, okay, I see how we have not given this a ton of thought. Hey y'all, it's Chimdi. The title of this video is true, all right? I did not join a cult, okay? But I did leave the really intense 2-year trauma program that I've been in. I was reflecting on my decision to leave and how it was that I found myself in such a super intense program that I kind of knew deep down was too intense for me, but I sort of barreled ahead and did it anyway. And the program truly has been one of the best healing spiritual experiences of my life. It's brought me so much love and support and friendship and insight and peace, and I'm like more in my body. So I really want to emphasize what a blessing the program has been. It truly was just too intense for me. And in reflecting on my experience, I was like, oh, the fact that I overrode my no to do something that I was like, this will be in your best interest though. And it was, I think, ultimately. It kind of showed me how it's easy to look at people who end up in really intense situations, such as cults, and think like,
oh, I would never end up in something like that.
I'm too smart for that. I'm too grounded for that. I'm too connected for that. And the experience taught me sort of the different ways I myself had vulnerabilities that allowed me to just put myself in a situation that wasn't fully aligned, though it did end up being an incredible blessing. So that's what this video is gonna be about. Thank you, subscribers. Thank you, Patreons. I love you all so much. If you wanna join my weekly newsletter, the link is in the description box. And I also am a creative coach. And if you would like some support, the link is in the description box as well. Let's talk about how you could end up in a cult if you aren't careful. Or I guess you is me, how I could have ended up in one if I had not been careful. And once again, I was not in one. And a big reason how you know I wasn't in one is that I was able to leave. You can't really waltz on out of cults. They usually make it very hard for you. And when I was like, yo, I gotta get out of here, they were like, we will miss you so much and we will respect your decision. And I was like, thank you for everything. So the very first thing is vulnerability and looking for the answer. When I joined the program, I had just quit my job and I was feeling very unmoored, very afloat, very like directionless, you know? Like I knew the full-time job I was doing wasn't the right choice for me. I knew I wanted to be this creator. I had started my coaching business, but I just didn't really have the structure. I didn't really have the sort of guidance and clarity around my spiritual practice, around healing. I didn't really know about trauma, none of that stuff. And so when I found out about this program, it really felt like this is the answer. This is it. No more searching, no more seeking. This is what to do. Heal your trauma. And so I basically just joined the gospel of heal your trauma, you know, which I think is, of the gospels to preach, I think healing trauma is one of the better ones. But I realized that point in my life where I was really like looking and lost made me very vulnerable, you know? And I do think I had enough discernment to sort of, like I truly tried a bunch of different stuff, read a bunch of different books, you know, I did some breath work here and there. And I do think the embodiment of the leader of the program I was in was so like incredible that I was like, okay, this is the program for me. And the felt truth of like, yeah, I actually have experienced a bunch of really painful things in my life, and what a blessing it is to be with it and to process it and to stop running from it. So even before I like joined the program in any official capacity, I was already seeing the like wisdom of what was being shared and feeling the benefits of taking those practices into my own life. And so I realized that, you know, the folks who end up in cults are very, very vulnerable. And we know what it's like. I think we all know what it's like to be vulnerable. That means that there are these sort of reduced barriers to really, really being discerning in terms of, is this the right choice for me? The second thing when it comes to, you know, being vulnerable to joining a cult, you know, a lot of these programs and groups and experiences, they are led by a charismatic leader, right? And usually those kinds of people, if you're on the outside looking in, it's very obvious that they are not, like they should not be trusted, that they are not safe, all of these things, right? And there's a bit of like, why can't you see what I see in terms of this person? And what I realized is that, you know, the leader of the program I was in, and like I said, not a cult. I saw the way having a charismatic leader is so powerful especially when you have a felt sense of the resonance and of the truth of what they're saying. It really genuinely speaks to you. For anyone following any pastor, any celebrity, any Instagram influencer, like there's something in the way that person is that really resonates deeply with their followers, and that's why they are following them, right? So it may not make sense to you because they don't resonate with you, but for that person, it's just like completely spot on. I think the tricky thing with charismatic leaders is that it really makes you wonder, okay, if I see challenges, if I see concerns, if I see things that like make me wonder, question,
is it me or is it them?
Because they have such a wonderful, beautiful embodiment that you're like,
I think it might be me.
like, I think it actually might be me. You know, in the spiritual path, there is such an emphasis on turning inwards and really taking responsibility and really doing a lot of self-examination and not, you know, being in a victim mindset, all of these things. And I see the incredible value of that. And I know what it's like to also see like, well, maybe there's some like systemic and structural things that could be done differently. But then when the emphasis is always like, no, turn that mirror back on you, you know, that provides tremendous value, but ultimately that means there isn't a lot of accountability when it comes to ways programs or organizations or situations could be done differently. And I think that's just what's so interesting is, like I said, I never would have really thought I would be like, you know, blinded by that. But to see myself in that situation, I was like, oh, that's how it happens. You know, I think of all the situations to put myself in that are like very intense and extreme. I mean, I've done remote year where I just sold all my stuff and traveled nonstop for a year. I quit my job without having another job lined up, shaved my head bald, got elective eye surgery, all things that truly I think are normal. Maybe not normal, but I did them. I thought it was fine. While I was in it, I was like, okay, I see how we have not given this a ton of thought. But here we are, and it's fine. I'm gonna be okay. I think of all the experiences to do that with. This trauma healing program was one of the best because the experience of being in it helped me to examine and release the very unconscious dynamics in me that attracted me to these things and sort of allowed me to override my system and made it so that I was, you know, being kind of reckless, you know. And really it's nice because it's the very thing that I kind of overrode my system for is the thing that taught me like, hey girl, maybe actually stop doing that. And I'm like,
oh yeah. I should stop doing that. Thank you.
And then I think the third thing that gets real tricky when it comes to cults, which like I said, I was not in, is that you do see improvements in your life. One of the things that I knew was way too intense for me, but I did it anyway, was the silent retreat that was a part of the program. And I made a video on here where I talked about what I got from the silent retreat. And truly, like I said, it was very, very, very powerful. I processed huge, like stuck chunks of trauma from my childhood. Like I'm lighter and freer and more happier and more joyful. Like I'm so much better off for having gone through the fire in that way. So I can say like, you know, it was really intense and I truly internally was kicking and screaming when it came to going, but you know, like, you know, it kind of worked out, right? The reason why I left the program is because it's like, yes, there were so many benefits and, you know, we can be gentle. We can be gentle with our journey. We don't need to accelerate. We can just gently heal versus, you know, going from 0 to 1,000. I used to joke how I went from truly never seeing a therapist one-on-one to then being in this really intense program. And I realized like,
yeah, that's actually like a sign.
Like that's actually an indicator of maybe the growth area is to like, we just be gentle with ourselves. We just gently heal. But like I said, you get all these benefits. And so it's like, I don't know, I know it was really intense, but like, look at your life, look at your joy, look at your glow. You're really happy. And I was like, yeah, girl. And some of the actual cults that people are in, it provides this level of like structure and and guidance and like, this is how it is, and this is what you believe, this is what you do. And there's a lot of relief that comes from like not having to do it yourself or figure it out yourself or basically live your own life. You just give your power over to this external source and you're like, you live it for me, and you just get to like passively go along, right? And then as a result, if you've been struggling living your life, things get better for you, and you now have a community, and you now have a structure, and you now have a belief system, and all these different things. Like, I'm not really one who watches like those kinds of documentaries about cults. I don't watch a lot of true crime stuff, you know, so I don't spend a lot of time wanting to know the psychology of folks in that situation. I've just kind of thought without much examination that like,
I would never fall for that.
I would never get suckered into that. Like,
I'm good.
and what that does is it creates this separation where you don't have compassion for people, you don't really understand what it means for them to go through something, you don't have empathy for their journey. And what this experience has really showed me is like, oh, like when people are vulnerable, when they need help, when they need support, when they're looking for answers, when they're looking for leadership, they'll do the best they can to find that kind of support where they can get it, you know, and where it feels really aligned for them. And I just feel really blessed that the way I did that was ultimately, you know, in alignment with like my values of love and of, you know, self-improvement and of loving God and of, you know, just like healing, like all these really beautiful things. What I feel so grateful for is that the program, I think what ends up happening is that you end up reliving your childhood through the program, and all the ways that you weren't met or seen or heard, or the things that kind of went unaddressed, the needs that weren't met. You end up understanding those gaps in your experience and then kind of getting to replay them in a safe container. As someone who has been doing a lot of healing around people pleasing, I realized that a big part of my personal journey was around being able to say no and being able to embody that no, like through every one of my chakras, you know, I'm just like, it's a no for me, right? And so to be able to heal that within this program and then be able to say no to the program itself and then have that no be respected was itself part of the healing journey. So even though I'm leaving the program early, I feel like in terms of like this big nugget of my healing development and spiritual development, it did exactly what it needed to do, which was help me understand that I can say no and that I am free to do what I want to do. And that's the unfortunate thing about cults, is that you don't really get to say no. You don't really get to get out of there, and that's a problem. So this is my reflection on being in this really intense program and ultimately deciding to leave it. And I also want to name that, you know, the program has roughly 400 people across the globe, 200 people in like the US cohort. And I want to say maybe out of like 400 people, maybe like 5 or 6 folks have left, and me being one of them. So the sort of retention rate is so freaking high, which is why I think this is really more about my personal journey than it is about the program itself and anything they need to do. Obviously, I have feedback and thoughts about how things can be improved. That's just the way my mind works. But I think ultimately, like, most people get a tremendous amount of value from it, and very few end up leaving. And I think that's a real testament to the power and the transformation that comes with being a part of it. I know I have not said the program's name at all during this entire thing, but if you're curious, I'll let you know in the comments. I think in terms of race and some of the more like global issues, the program that I participated in was like mostly white, and so I think that's one of the factors as well. But I feel like that's a whole other video. I don't really want to get into it, if I'm being honest. So if you're a Black person and you're thinking about doing this program and you're curious, let's go on a phone call and we can talk about it. But otherwise, truly, I have nothing but positive things to say. It's been, like I said, one of the best experiences of my life. All right, if you are in a cult, I hope you get out of there. I don't know how you're watching YouTube right now. I feel like the rules must be very lax where you're at, but I hope you get out of there, and I hope you know you are free and that you get to say no, and it's a beautiful thing to be free. All right, bye.